Welcome back, Helldivers. It's good to see you again. The Servant of Freedom, warbond, that has been released for a while now, has quite a noticeable patch of interesting and unique items to mess around with like always. One of them, the Ultimatum, is even designed after the Davy Crockett rocket launcher, which is insane when you think about why such an item even exists, and how deadly such an item is when actually used. So, as we have our own mini version of the orbital precision strike stratagem, how good is it against, say, the grenade pistol, which is a smaller and more versatile version of the Ultimatum, with less explosive packed into it? Today, we're going to look into this and see which one has more competitive edge for the number of content available. So let's first look at what the new weapon is to start. The Ultimatum is a secondary grenade pistol with limited rounds and range, but comes with a larger explosive profile than most explosive weapons in game. Its effectiveness is designed for destroying key points of interest or destroying a tough enemy in 1 to 2 shots. However, it must be stated heavily, you cannot use this as a normal secondary weapon. What I mean by this is that you can only hold up to 2 rounds within the weapon, and that is it, while at the same time having limited range which can affect how far you can use it. All of this is quite obvious when you look at the stats overall. It has a damage of 4500, capacity 1, recoil 43, and fire rate 900. Now, as provided, the weapon has one of the biggest provided total damage compared to any of the other weapons in game. This can be quite easy compared to the 500 kg explosive stratagem with a damage of 2000, so the two are on the extreme end of things, so just how vastly powerful they are as a one and done item. However, do note that both items are operated in different ways and may have a hidden value to them to dictate the differences in damage overall. Generally speaking, the Ultimatum with its high damage does poorly in the rest of the stats, which does make sense considering that it is a grenade launcher on crack. Now, capacity to start shows just how limited the weapon and the end user using the weapon are when they choose to apply its damage to nearby enemies. You have a max of 2 shots, 1 in chamber and 1 in reserve. This here explains that you cannot spam it willy-nilly and must use it only if the scenario requires it. Ideally, you want to use this against a group of enemies, the bigger enemies you know may be a bigger threat down the line, and certain points of interest that apply to your main objectives, such as bug holes or bot reinforcement plants. We then have its recoil, which is acceptable at where it's currently at, and then you have its fire rate, which is fairly fast and allows quick impact upon being used. So overall, the weapon excels as a one and done weapon with poor capacity, recoil and fire rate, but exceeds exceptionally well with its ludicrous damage and explosive profile. Think of the weapon in 2 ways. One as a last resort weapon when all stratagems and weapons are not available to use, or 2 as a quick and semi-reliable weapon for destroying key objectives there and there without the need of calling in a stratagem. There's also another part of the weapon that's not been mentioned until now, and that is the range. Its range is okay. When standing still and firing parallel to the ground, the Ultimatum has a practical range of approximately 17 meters before a projectile hits the ground. At a 45-degree angle, the Ultimatum projectile has a practical range of approximately 30 meters. Now, this is okay. Not amazing, but okay. It has enough range packed into it to where you can easily close the gap between you and enemies that may chase you, but you do have to remember to fire the weapon at a certain angle if you wish to gather that extra bit of range. The problem with this is that you won't always be able to match that range so easily when things are so chaotic. Hence why this weapon is more or less a last resort type weapon to use when things do go badly, as it can clear out all types of enemies fairly well, but with limited ammo available, you have to make sure your shots count. So comparing the grenade pistol and Ultimatum shows a fair and noticeable consistency where both weapons excel the most in both stats and usage. The grenade pistol is a small but mighty powerhouse secondary weapon that has been a staple in Helldivers for a while now when it comes down to destroying the bug holes, bot fabricators, points of interest, and generally some large groups of enemies on impact. It is compact, easy to handle, and great for quickly clearing out enemies at mid-range. The grenade itself has a decent explosive radius, and is great for quickly dealing with light to medium armoured enemies. Looking at the stats for the two, we can see large differences between what is offered. While the grenade pistol has a lower damage threshold on hand and has similar stats that the Ultimatum has, it has a high reserve count of 10, which allows much more longer and continuous use while out in the field. With 10 rounds available, it allows players to play a more safe and conservative playstyle when dealing with multiple points of interest. The Ultimatum compared to this lacks the one bonus of allowing longer play over time. While it can destroy bigger threats more easier, the lack of reserves forces players to pick the targets carefully unless you wish to be left empty-handed. On top of that, it also seems like the grenade pistol's range is much more longer than what the Ultimatum has, where the steep fall off for the pistol is less severe and noticeable. Looking at the two, you have one weapon that's designed purely for destroying everything in one go. On the other hand, you have a grenade pistol which is light and versatile and can be useful in a number of scenarios that won't get you killed. Picking the weapons apart will all depend on where you intend to use them and how you intend to use them. The Ultimatum, for example, is ideal to take with you if you are ever facing anything wave-based or need to defend a key objective. At the moment things start to pick up, the weapon can be used to cull a wide number of enemies in one go, while the more heavy equipment can then be called in, which is excellent when used with a well-coordinated team who know what they are doing and have ways to support you and your team members through multiple means, such as having the ammo backpack. The grenade pistol follows the same pathway as the Ultimatum, except that this thing won't be killing the bio titans with the rounds it has. Instead, this will be more helpful with dispatching the groups of enemies quickly because of its given blast radius. So ideally, this can be used in all sorts of activities since it can apply fairly good damage wherever you go, but it's more designed to be paired up with a good and fully functioning primary rather than a last resort weapon. This is something I would take with me if I intend to destroy bug holes either with a team or on my end quickly, as an example. So when should you use each one? If you're in a tight spot where speed and mobility are key, say a crowded hallway or fast moving enemy, go for the standard grenade pistol. It's quick to draw, easy to aim, and great for hitting those pesky enemies that won't stay still. On top of that, it's great for destroying the bug holes, fabricated and illuminated spaceships in one go, as long as the weak points have been damaged. It's also handy for destroying the key containers on some maps that hold extra loot such as super credits. These tend to be the best time to use weapon, as it's a one shot against them, and usually spare ammo is usually nearby if you need to ever refill it, so it can fit many roles you may be after. On the other hand, if you're fighting off waves of enemies or dealing with more formidable threats in open spaces like the tanks, observer towers, or tunnel spawning enemies, then the GP31 Ultimatum is your best friend. It's perfect for those tedious encounters like taking out clusters of enemies and making sure you got that extra punch when facing tougher enemies without the need of stratagems. Because of its disadvantages, it trades all of its negatives into one big advantage that makes it worth using when the time calls for it. In the end, both weapons have their strengths and are useful in different scenarios. The standard grenade pistol is quick and reliable and great as an all-round utility item, but if you want something with a bit more firepower, designed for creating as much craters as possible, then the GP31 Ultimatum is the way to go. The choice ultimately comes down to your playstyle and what you need for the mission at hand. I would personally place the grenade pistol as the key winner only because it has more preferred roles tied to it, to where you can use it for a wide number of things. The Ultimatum is good, and personally great to use on bot planets as they tend to have a lot of hard-hitting hardware that requires stratagem levels of damage to destroy them. However, its limited range and ammo capacity makes it hard to use for a number of missions available. You also have to worry about the blast radius as well, which is stronger than the grenade pistol, and it will kill you if you don't gauge your distance correctly. Both have their usages and can work in a number of loadouts if you know what you are doing, and ultimately, they are pretty fun to use. So there we have it. I hope you all enjoyed the video. If you have any thoughts on the content shared, or genuinely like what was shown, then please leave a like, a comment, and subscribe for more future stuff. It was great seeing you again, Helldivers, and I hope to see you again soon.